The choice is, do you really, really, really want to go to Wall Street? And my dad had always said to me, don't get stuck behind a desk. My dad was a passionate and life-loving human being, and he always said, John, don't get stuck behind a desk if you can find any alternative. I've always been grateful. It's a great way to bring up children, let me tell you, when you have your studio in your home and on the property. The workbenches, for instance, the one I have my right hand on, I purchased from Germany in about 1973. I was in business a couple of years. It's the finest workbench in the world for a cabinet maker, for a restorer to own. It paid for itself over, the next several months because I stayed 2 hours or 3 hours later every day just to be near it. I worked overtime quite willingly. Working on certain things during the day on these benches with the light coming in through the windows is a blessing. I mean, I taught myself to carve ambidextrously when I was 21 years old. I mean, that blessed this house right there. That was the first thing I ever carved when I was 21 years old. I took a piece of wood and I drew that on there. And that is not what we call intaglia carving, that is relief carving. Everything you see is the remainder of what's left after you remove the background. I don't think you have to be born a restorer. You have to just be born with a commitment to doing quality work. You know, my dad was a good German father, and he said, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And I still believe him. I had already had a little bit of experience building furniture. So I met a guy named Hans Knoll at 11th and Pine Street in Philadelphia, who was so successful because of his knowledge of restoration. He actually was one of the last of the generation to apprentice in Berlin. He answered every question I ever had. I think because I had so much confidence in his lineage as the ultimate Renaissance man of furniture, that gave me the confidence to say, you know what, I can have a world-class restoration studio based on what I'm learning from Hans Knoll and based on working for the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. I remember that early on, I went to my dear friend Hans and I said, Hans, I am capable of restoring fine antiques, and people are bringing me their kitchen chairs. He said, John, it's the nature of the beast. They'll trust you with their junk before they trust you with the good stuff. And he was so right. I mean, after, what, a few years in business, I was trusted with a desk that was custom built for George Washington. It needed a new writing surface. It needed turnings at the top in the gallery. It needed a secret compartment rebuilt. One leg missing a chunk, I had to splice it in, carve it, and make it disappear. When you do good restoration work, nobody knows it. You know, that's the irony of it. People trusted me eventually to work on a lot of really beautiful French furniture. That period Louis XVI mirror that's 200 years old and is standing in the next room came with this house, and it was in a state of benevolent neglect, which is the way we like to find things. Benevolent neglect is a beautiful thing. In other words, no one ever sanded it. No one ever broke a piece of ormolu. So all the ormolu, all the gilt bronze on there is original, and it's complete. If I see something has been sanded, I'll advise you never to buy it, not to touch it. It's been destroyed. There are restorers out there who will sand things. If I've restored 20,000 pieces of furniture in my lifetime, I never, ever sanded a finish off of one. You sand a piece of furniture when you build it, and that's the last time it gets sanded. If someone sands it in the restoration process, just grab your furniture and run. I said, Hans, why is somebody paying you $2,500 to restore that piece of furniture? He said, because I wouldn't sand it. somebody doesn't like the fact that a couple of veneers are popped up a little higher than the others, they would go sand it flat and then finish it and give it back. And then you've got veneers that are thin and veneers that are the right thickness, and you've begun the destruction of a piece of furniture. He said, I take up the loose ones, glue them back down, and then they're all even. That's the difference. And so we agreed from that moment on there's only one right way to do something. So that's what we did. Oh, it's ridiculously satisfying. Over a short period of time, I go from frustration to satisfaction. I've always had the cycle of frustration and satisfaction that comes through restoring things. You have to go through that critical stage while you're in the mindset of a restoration. I'm extremely critical of these right now. Most of what I do these days is really more artistic than production. The real need in the world right now is to restore and maintain what already exists. Some of these restorations will last for hundreds of years. Somebody is going to appreciate this thing for centuries. Nothing gives me greater satisfaction. I've been doing it for 50 years, and I do it as because I love it. And I never expected to retire until I was at least 105. And if I have the opportunity to continue working for the next 30 years, I will.